Hello and welcome to episode 337 of AvTalk. I am Ian Petchnick, here as always with
Jason Rabinowitz. Hello, Ian. How are you?
Hello, Jason. I'm doing well. Hello from across an ocean, sir. How are you doing this fine week in Eastern Europe?
The Atlantic Ocean, to be precise. That's right. I am in Prague this week with a friend of the podcast, Jeremy, who we may or may not work into a podcast next week's episode.
Excellent.
About our journeys.
Excellent.
But yeah, first time in Prague. It's been high up on my list for a long time of places to go. And I've been getting my steps in the past couple days. And my tram rides and my metro rides and my bus rides, but my feet hurt.
There you go. We had a great time at Dorkfest, but we'll talk a little bit about that later in the show. But we do want to dive right into the non-story of the week. This is one of those things where aviation folks are going, that's kind of funny. And non-aviation folks are having a lot of attention heaped upon it. And so here's what happened. Air Force One yesterday, on the 16th of September, was on its way from Andrews Air Force Base over to the UK for US President Donald Trump's state visit there. And they almost caught the Spirit of Spirit Airlines because there was a Spirit Airlines flight coming into Boston, Spirit Flight 1300 to be precise. And they were above Air Force One. Then they needed to be below Air Force One, and they were on a possibly, maybe, could have been conflicting path. So the air traffic controller told Spirit to turn right 20 degrees, just to alleviate any possibility that these two aircraft could come into contact, because that would be what we call a technical term, very bad.
That would make the news, and it would be warranted.
And that would be warranted. So over the course of 23.63 seconds, yes, I've timed it, the controller asked...
We expect nothing less from you.
The controller asked them to turn right 20 degrees 4 times.
That's not great.
The first time, Spirit, turn right 20 degrees, vectors for traffic in descent, instruction, and explanation. No response. Pay attention, Spirit 1300, turn right 20 degrees. Spirit 1300, turn right 20 degrees now. Then, in a not quite yelling voice, but in a I'm going to have to get my yardstick out sort of voice, Spirit Wings 1300, turn right 20 degrees immediately. Upon which they replied and they turned. They started turning when they were 11 miles apart. They stopped turning and came a beam. Well, not even a beam, but, parallel at 8 miles apart. So safe separation was maintained the entire time, but the controller was sure not happy. Some snappy remarks telling Spirit, I'm sure you can see who it is at flight level 320, maintain 330. And another one, keep an eye out for him. He's white and blue.
Yes, I think there was also the jab about get off your iPads and pay attention.
Oh, we're getting there.
We haven't gotten there yet. Okay.
Yeah, no. That's the last of it. So they continued on for a few moments. This is all in New York Center, by the way.
Oh,
and so the New York Center controller hands them off to Boston Center, gives them direct Ruiz, tells them to contact Boston Center, gives them the frequency. And then the controller goes, I got to talk to you guys twice every time. Pay attention, get off the iPad.
I mean, there's a lot to unpack here, and there's also very little to unpack because nothing actually happened. If you are flying in airspace adjacent to Air Force One and you hear them on frequency, like surely they must have heard that it was on frequency. There's no question that they heard.
To put a point on Jason's comment here, yes, Air Force One was on the same frequency. They were not long before Spirit was directed to descend. Air Force One was directed to ascend. So they were on the same frequency. They're in the same recording.
Yeah, maybe be on your A game at that point. Pay attention, like the controller said, because of course you can't have a New York Center controller not give attitude. Like that's just the way it's going to be. But to be fair,
that's part of the pay package.
Yeah, you got to have it. But to be fair to the Spirit pilots, we do not know what was happening in that cockpit. They may have gotten ECAM messages or a rowdy, drunk Spirit passenger because, It's Spirit. They could have been dealing with something, but they probably would have mentioned that as like, I'm sorry, we were dealing with some stuff and that never actually happened. So, yeah, if you're flying in the same airspace as Air Force One, just like the controller said, maybe pay attention.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things that I wanted to bring up with this, and Jason brought up the first one, which is we don't know what was happening. And to that point, their radio responses start off very soft, come in completely garbled. And I have no idea if that's the equipment that is being used to receive these VHF signals and record them on behalf of the liveatc.net site, or if that's an issue with the radios. I don't know that.
I
My
would say that
assumption
the
would
former.
be
It,
liveatc.net.
it's got to almost certainly be live ATC. They're not exactly working with equipment as high grade as the FAA is.
Absolutely.
It may be more reliable than the FAA is at the end of the day, but it's certainly not as high quality.
But to Jason's point, we don't know, kind of what was happening on there, because it did take them a couple times to respond multiple times. So I'm not sure if they were just not hearing it or something. But also to Jason's point, yeah, if you know Air Force One's on frequency, maybe keep your ears on.
Right. But again, there's also TCAS, right? Surely Air Force One has TCAS. And if there was truly something happening, if they
We
were
were
ever
far
truly getting
outside
within
TCAS.
conflict, yeah, this was not ever going to become a problem. Because remember, the air traffic controller could have also given instructions to Air Force One, probably begrudgingly, but that was also always an option.
Right. The aircraft diverged. Spirit descended and then crossed below Air Force One. Air Force One continued out over the ocean over to the UK. So nothing unsafe here as far as levels of safe separation, nothing that doesn't happen with some regularity. As far as pilots not hearing the controller the first time around, but this one, of course, given the aircraft involved, receives a lot more.
Yeah, but
A lot more attention.
maybe this Spirit pilot was distracted by the news. Maybe they had heard the news. That's our second item here. That Spirit wants to trim apparently $100 million in annual savings from its pilot contract by, does that say October 1st?
It sure does.
That's like 2 weeks from now.
Correct. So this comes to us from what I assume is an unhappy Spirit pilot or someone close to them. But this is a letter from the EVP and COO of Spirit to the leader of the Spirit ALPA union, saying that because of Spirit's second bankruptcy, they're looking for significant cost savings, including labor costs. And, quote, this includes approximately $100 million in annual cost savings within our collective agreement with ALPA. They are proposing, they being Spirit, immediate negotiations so that they can reach a consensual agreement by October 1st, 2025. If an agreement can't be reached between Spirit and the union, they are prepared to seek relief under the bankruptcy code and a rejection of the CBA. So it's basically, we need to save $100 million, or it might be more than $100 million.
Rocking a hard place there. Finding that much money in concessions in such a short period of time. Yeah, good luck.
Well, I mean, good luck, though luck may not have anything to do with it. Last week, we talked about United Airlines CEO Scott Kirby and his ability to do math, his self-proclaimed ability to do math. And expanding on that a little bit, Kirby has also ruled out acquiring Spirit's assets after proclaiming that the airline is definitely going out of business, which I thought was an interesting thing to do. But also he gave some math himself. And I thought these were the interesting numbers where he said reconfiguring Spirit aircraft would cost $15 million a piece, and that their gate and route structure don't make a ton of sense.
I don't see why that's a problem, the $15 million to convert. It's not like Spirit United hasn't done this before. They have a whole host of, I think, 737-800s or maybe 700s that it sourced from other airlines, including China Southern. I think I was even on one somewhat recently.
Those, I think, weren't those the older Airbus too?
It was, yes, actually. I think 319s,
319s, yeah.
perhaps? Yeah, so United is no stranger to gobbling up aircraft that other airlines are done and have kind of thrown away. So I don't believe him when he says they would not take. If Spirit suddenly had a dozen A321neos to give, would they not take them because they cost too much to refurbish? No, I don't believe that. I think he's grandstanding a bit here. To what end, I don't know, but
Right.
it just doesn't. The math isn't mathing. Let's say
The math
if they've done it before, why wouldn't they?
But
do
he
it
said
again?
he can do math.
Well, sure, but they already did it in the past, so I don't know.
To that end, as well, not necessarily to that end, but to more Scott Kirby ends, he also talked about, and this was with Brian Summers on the Global Travel stage, he talked about the global trade deficit between U.S. carriers and international carriers. And this, I thought, was super interesting, if only because that language is in no way accidental.
No, so
that is playing to an audience of one, good sir.
And who's that one?
Well, I think
Say it.
that I think I can spell it out here. I think that Scott Kirby is looking to the U.S. government and through the direction of the U.S. president to say, oh, trade deficits are bad. How can we help? Where, they're talking about, Kirby's talking about basically United and Delta because he's completely discounted American Airlines, which I find hilarious because it's maybe not 100% a personal
There's a
vendetta.
lot of hyperbole going on there.
Well, there's certainly a lot of hyperbole, but there's also a bit of personal animosity between Scott Kirby and American Airlines when he was passed over to succeed former CEO Doug Parker. I think we can all say he showed them and be very serious about it. But I also think that it's very interesting that he's setting himself up to lean on this trade deficit talk where U.S. carriers are maybe looking to the government for help. I'm not sure if that, what that form of help would take, whether it's whittling down foreign carrier access to the U.S. or saying we want more access to other countries or something along those lines. But I think it's very interesting that he's setting up this trade deficit talk now.
Yeah, should be a little careful about what he says here. I think the last time we went down this path and had the U.S. airlines ranting and raving about foreign carriers, especially the Middle Eastern carriers, that ended up going nowhere. And now they're all partners with the Middle Eastern airlines. So they seem quite happy with that situation. So again, I don't really know what his end game is here. Perhaps he's just way smarter than I am, which is probably the case, knows exactly what he's doing. But what is he hoping to gain from comments like that, other than pissing off every one of his partner airlines?
Well, there's that.
There's that.
We'll see in a few years' time, I guess. Speaking of partner airlines, the U.S. Department of Transportation has decided Delta and Aeromexico can no longer be partners as of January 1st, 2026. The DOT has revoked the authorization for Aeromexico and Delta's joint venture, saying that it is anti-competitive for a variety of reasons, and that they considered other alternatives, waiting and seeing, changing the terms of the joint venture, but they've decided that nothing can remedy this. It needs to be dismantled.
All right, that's one down. Let's go for the rest. Transatlantic JVs, Trans-Pacific JVs. Let's go. Let's get them all to the point where there are none left. There is no reason there should be legal, immunized, fair collaboration. It's not right. It sucks that Delta and Aeromexico have to go first here for reasons that might not be the best. But one down, a couple more to go.
To Jason's point, antitrust immunized joint ventures between multiple airlines, for those that don't follow this as closely, and we do not blame you one bit, allow airlines to collude without penalty on things that you normally wouldn't be able to collude on, like prices, which I think what he's getting at is that prices are higher because airlines that operate on roughly the same routes and exactly the same routes are no longer competing for your business.
Exactly. It is quite literally legalized, immunized price fixing. Don't like any of that. I don't know why anyone would, except
Except the airlines
CEOs and Scott Kirby and Doug Parker and all of them who we just discussed.
So Delta, for its part, says it's disappointed and it is reviewing the department's order and considering next steps. So we'll see if this goes quietly. I don't think it will. Indigo has announced that it's going to Athens with its A321 XLRs. That's not news. They had previously announced that that's what they were going to do, but now we have a bit of a schedule. They are expecting to take their first A321 XLR by the end of this year, confirming that Athens will be the first city. And beginning next year, they will start service 6 times weekly, 3 times each from Delhi and Bombay, or Mumbai. I'm looking at the airport code, sorry, to Athens. They are also going to launch a new international route to Copenhagen, and this will be with one of the damp leased Norse 787s. So that will be another destination in Western Europe, in addition to Manchester, Amsterdam, and London. So things are starting to come together as they anticipate the first of their 12 billion new Airbus aircraft.
It's a lot of airplanes.
Jason, when I read this next story, I thought, surely that can't be true.
Okay.
And then I read even more, and I said, surely that can't be true. But multiple sources that I trust are reporting this to be true. And that terrifies me.
What are you getting?
In July, an Airpeace 737-500 in Nigeria overran the runway at Port Harcourt. This happens from time to time. Initial indications were that the aircraft landed late down the runway and then suffered an overrun, which we now know to be true, and we have some facts and figures here. The aircraft touched down 2,264 meters, or 7,427 feet from the threshold, about 3/4 of the way down the runway.
Ooh.
It rolled for another 945 meters, or about 3,100 feet, and overran the runway by about 200 meters.
Yikes.
Ended up in the grass.
That's a lot of runway.
So what happened? Well, the first officer called for a go-round. The captain didn't listen, and they landed very far down the runway. And as part of the safety investigation, it turned out that both pilots had alcohol in their system.
Strike 2.
And the cabin crew tested positive for THC.
Strike 3. Do we get a 4th strike?
Now the 4th strike kind of comes against the airline, because the airline suspended the captain, not for having alcohol in their system, but because they didn't listen to the first officer when the first officer called for the go-round.
Okay, but that's also a valid reason to suspend him.
It is.
Some might say an even more valid reason to suspend him.
I agree. They say that the alcohol had nothing to do with it because, and this is where we get to strike 5, I think we've invented a new sport, against the Nigerian safety officials. The Nigerian safety officials have not told the airline directly that the pilots tested positive for alcohol. So it's part of the report.
How do we know that?
But they haven't. It's part of the report, but they haven't notified the airline. And apparently there's some sort of official notification that needs to take place. This all sounds very HR-ish.
Well, I think they know now.
But hopefully that gets taken care of. The first officer has since been returned to duty.
Oh, you forgot strike 6, by the way.
Well, they weren't notified about the alcohol problem.
No,
so the airline
strike 6
said,
the CVR was overwritten.
Oh, yes. Sorry. Yes. Strike 6. The CVR was overwritten.
I think this is Canadian baseball at this point.
Oh, my goodness.
Like, not the MLB version of Canadian baseball. Like something else entirely. Like 5, 6 strikes. This is crazy. Madness.
What is it? Is it Australian rules baseball?
Maybe. Well, there's no way to know. But yeah, the CVR being overwritten is particularly egregious because it's not like the aircraft went on to operate another flight immediately. It was stuck in the grass at the end of the runway. that they overrun.
It hasn't flown
So
since. To the best of my knowledge, it
somebody
has not flown since.
forgot to pull the breaker on that, stop the recording. Not great. For 2+ hours, or is it 3+ hours? 2+ hours?
So it would have been 2+ hours after
2+
after the
hours.
landing.
It sat there recording, and nobody thought, hey, maybe we should stop the recorder so we could find out what happened.
Not great.
Cool. Good stuff.
The FAA is proposing a $3,139,319 fine of Boeing for safety violations related to the Alaska door plug blowout. So these are safety violations that occurred from September 2023 through February of 2024. They are related to actions that eventually led to the January 2024 door plug blowout and interference with safety officials' independence. The FAA says that it identified hundreds of quality system violations at Boeing's factory in Renton and Spirit Aerosystems factory in Wichita, Kansas. In addition, Boeing provided 2 unairworthy aircraft to the FAA for airworthiness inspections and failed to follow its own quality system. And going on, the FAA found that non-ODA Boeing employees pressured a Boeing ODA unit member to sign off on a 737 MAX airplane so Boeing could meet its delivery schedule. So the ODA and non-ODA refers to the Organization Delegation Authority. So those are Boeing employees that work on behalf of the FAA to ensure that Boeing's activities are in FAA compliance and the aircraft can be certificated.
It's not only disappointing to hear how much was going wrong at Boeing and Spirit at the time, which, to be fair, this is quite a little ways in the past at this point, but a $3.139 million fine is like, why even bother with that amount? It is so insignificant to an organization like Boeing that you could add another zero to it, and even that wouldn't matter.
Well,
the
FAA, anticipating your ire, Jason, says that the FAA used its maximum statutory civil penalty authority consistent with the law. So if you want to find Boeing more money, you're going to have to go to Congress.
I think that is something we should do, maybe, because whenever that calculation was formulated, clearly doesn't represent modern reality, because that many egregious missteps and miscues on Boeing's fault, if it says literally hundreds and somehow that fine only amounts to paltry 3.1 million, it's not even a point in having a fine at that level.
I also want to know what the exact formula is, and the FAA doesn't say here, because $3,139,319 is oddly specific. So there's got to be some sort of formula that arrives at that figure. And I would very much like to find out what that is. In good government news, the Korean government has saved countless backs and butts with their latest decision affecting Korean Air's 777s.
That's a segue right there. Super interesting.
Jason, but tell us what happened.
Well, most airlines in the world at this point have converted or taken delivery of their Boeing 777s in a 3-4-3 configuration. So 3 seats, an aisle, 4 seats, an aisle, and then 3 seats. That is not the way the 777 was originally spec'd out. I'm not going to say many, but some airlines still operate in the original roomier 3-3-3 configuration, including Korean Airlines, who recently finally got the go-ahead to absorb Asiana Airlines. And that deal took a long time to go through. There were many stipulations. And apparently one of them was, hey, don't go screwing around with your aircraft and making them less comfortable. And that's exactly what Korean tried to do with 10 of its 777s, moving them from 3-3-3 to 3-4-3. They completed one, and apparently the Korean government caught wind of that, didn't like that, even though it already happened on one aircraft. It said, don't do it, or we're going to make things unpleasant for you. And then Korean Airlines said, okay, we'll stop. So somewhere out there, there is one lone singular 777 in the Korean fleet with worse 3-4-3 seats, and I guess it's just luck of the draw forever with that one plane now?
I hope we can track down. I'll do some research to see if we can track down which one of them it was.
Yeah. This is unheard of, though. This is,
And let
I
people
don't
know to avoid it.
I don't recall anything like this ever happening before, where an airline squashes an aircraft refurbishment program that is already underway. So one aircraft is already done. I don't know of any other time this has happened, but that's going to be real tricky for Korean to figure out. But that's what happens when you gobble up the other major player in the country and you agree to things to make the deal go through. And sometimes it's not going to be specifications that you like, but real weird that the Korean authorities wouldn't have stopped that beforehand, not after they already redid one aircraft.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they didn't even know about it, and it was one of those things where they found out about it and they're like, wait a second, they
Wait
can't
a
do that.
minute, they can't do that.
Let's stick with 777 news and talk about the 777X. Because Boeing CEO Kelly Ortberg says that they are falling behind yet again in their efforts to secure FAA certification for the 777-9. He says Boeing still faces a mountain of paperwork. The mountain of work is still there, he said last week, and they're going through the certification test, but they're falling behind. However, Boeing still says that it expects to certify the aircraft and have it in service in 2026. So everything's
Sure.
working, everything's going well. It just seems to be a paperwork delay. So hopefully,
Look,
they continue to move forward with this.
I have been on enough flights with paperwork delays to know that whatever they're going to tell you it's going to be, whether it's 5 minutes or 20 minutes, it's not going to be 20 minutes. It's going to be an hour. It's going to be 2 hours waiting on that paperwork. Now, blow that out to being literally certifying an airplane. Paperwork's not coming through. Not great. It's going to be a minute. Not counting on that 2026 number myself.
Yeah. Boeing still lacks a FAA approval for, quote, a good portion of the certification program, saying that the FAA is only granting kind of approval after approval after approval. They're not granting the large chunks of the type inspection authorization the way they had previously done so. And so I think this is good from an FAA standpoint, where, taking an incremental approach to certification of a new aircraft is a good way to do it, but maybe they can get it done on time. I don't know. To Jason's point, I fear he may be right. But Boeing says, hey, 2026 is
never
where we're
going to
at.
build another airplane. If its experience is this bad with
sad.
737s and the 777X, like, they're never going to build another new airplane. It just, whenever you think it can't get worse, it somehow gets worse.
And in our last 777 story, Kalitta Air has finally taken delivery of the first 2 Boeing 777-300 ERSF aircraft from Israeli Aerospace Industries. Those are the 777-300 ER-based converted freighters, of which they will get 7 in all. Those particular aircraft have a 100-ton payload capacity, will replace elder 747s, which I'm not necessarily pleased about, but I understand it needs to be done. And they are supposed to begin revenue service in early October. So look for those flying at a cargo hub near you soon.
Yeah, that sure is bittersweet news, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, the last US-based 747-200 retired with Kalitta. So I assume that even though they're taking delivery of these 777-300ER freighters, that Kalitta will also retire the last 747-400, and not anytime soon.
Yep. So they're going to be around for a long time.
That's my bet. Where are we going? We're going to, do you want to go to Papua New Guinea next?
Always. The answer is always yes.
All right. The national airline from Papua New Guinea, Air Niugini, received its first A220-300 as they continue to take delivery of new aircraft and retire older aircraft. So this is the first of 3 A220-300s that the airline will take, and they will also take 8 100s of the A220 eventually. And Airbus says that this is now the 25th airline to begin operations with the A220.
All right. Good news all around. Of course, we can't show you in this podcast what it looks like, but it is a looker.
We can put a link in the show notes.
Yes. Also in new livery news, for those of you who like cursed airplanes and cursed liveries, JetBlue has its third New York Jets A320 livery because, why not have one, but two, but three times, finally. This one is named JETBLUE with exclamation points after every letter. For those of you who are tortured Jet fans, you will get the reference.
I thought you were going to do the Jets cheer. Oh,
I know. I refuse to do the Jets cheer because the Jets don't deserve a cheer now or
That's
ever.
fair. That's
but
fair.
It's right there in the name. It's the Jets, so I got to give it a shout out. It's fine. It looks nice enough, but cursed airplane. Cursed livery, cursed sports team.
All right, we're going to close out the show with some well wishes. Jason and I would like to wish Wyatt Dodds a very, very wonderful journey as they begin their private pilot's license at the ripe old age of 15. So flying a plane before you can drive, what a way to do it.
That's
so
pretty
good
great.
luck to Wyatt.
My only advice is don't fly to Antarctica without permission.
Without permission, exactly. And hopefully after you get your PPL, you can take us for a ride.
That'd be cool. Let's do that. Congratulations.
Jason's going to go wander around Eastern Europe for a little bit and hopefully make it home tomorrow.
I'm only going through France during a major strike. What could go wrong?
We'll keep everyone posted, and we'll talk more about what happened at Dorkfest in LA last week, how Jason made it over to Europe, and how he made it back with our good friend Jeremy, and how many sandwiches we owe Jeremy next week. So stick around for that episode. In the meantime, this has been episode 337 of AvTalk. I am Ian Petchnick, here, as always, with
Jason Rabinowitz. Thanks for listening.